The lead Prylorian diplomat sneered in disgust, his voice dripping with derision as he looked across the conference table at Admiral Russell Greene and spat. "Your pathetic Earth and its primitive technology will soon belong to the Prylorian Empire." Russell just smiled back calmly. He had been expecting this. The Prylorians saw humanity as helpless prey, ripe for conquest. But Russell knew something the arrogant aliens didn't. For centuries, ever since the discovery of 800,000 derelict dreadnought battleships drifting in the Kuiper Belt, Earth had been preparing for this day. While the galaxy believed those ancient warships, relics of a long-extinct precursor race, were unsalvageable junk, humanity had been quietly recovering, repairing, and upgrading them in secret. Each vessel was a technological marvel that outclassed any modern ship. As a final trump card against alien invasion, the revitalized Dreadnought fleet had been hidden away in dimensional rift bunkers, waiting for the call. And now, that call had come. The Prylorian Armada hung in Earth's skies, ready to liberate the backwards humans. Russell stood on the bridge of the flagship Dreadnought, the Retribution, as the mighty ship shook off its eons of slumber and came to life. All around him, hundreds of thousands of other dreadnoughts were doing the same, emerging from their extra-dimensional dry docks crewed by steely-eyed men and women ready to defend Earth. He opened a channel to the Prylorian fleet and stared into Kellar's stunned face as the alien struggled to comprehend the endless ranks of human warships suddenly filling his view screen. Russell spoke clearly and firmly. "This is your one chance. Retreat now or face annihilation. You wanted a war, but you made the mistake of underestimating humanity's resolve and capabilities. What happens next is on your head." Silence filled the airwaves as the two immense space armadas faced off, weapons systems locked on and humming with barely restrained power. The fate of the Earth, and maybe the galaxy, would be decided here and now. Kellar's face twisted in a furious snarl. "Attack!" he roared. "Destroy those primitive ships!" The Prylorian fleet surged forward, a wall of metal hurtling towards the human dreadnoughts. Lances of energy stabbed out from the alien ships, slamming into the ancient vessel's shields. The shields flickered but held firm, absorbing the onslaught without buckling. Russell's eyes narrowed. "All ships return fire." The dreadnoughts spoke, their weapons unleashing a hail of destruction. Searing beams of directed energy and volleys of kinetic projectiles ripped into the Prylorian ships. Hulls buckled and shattered under the assault, entire vessels crippled or destroyed with a single blow. Kellar pounded his fist on the armrest of his command chair, his eyes wild. "Summon the Juggernaut!" he screamed. A massive hyperspace rift tore open, disgorging a ship so enormous it seemed to fill the sky. The Prylorian mothership, a leviathan overflowing with weapons. Swarms of fighters poured from its hangar bays like angry insects as a huge energy collector began to glow with baleful light at the mothership's prow. On the Retribution's bridge, alarm klaxons blared. Russell pulled up the sensor data on the behemoth, his eyes scanning the schematics. There, the power core, deep in the heart of the vessel. A weakness. "Omega Wing, Sigma Wing, concentrate fire on coordinates 7251 by 4819, Russell commanded. "All power to forward lance batteries." A dozen dreadnoughts peeled off from the main formation, their weapons stabbing out at the specified point. The mothership's shields flared, energy crackling across their surface, holding back the dreadnought's fire, but weakening. All across near-Earth space, Prylorian fighters fell upon the human ships like ravenous predators. The dreadnoughts' point defenses lit up the void as they fought to repel the attackers. For every fighter destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. Explosions pockmarked the hulls of the ancient vessels as the swarming fighters found weaknesses to exploit. From Earth, a second wave of ships arose, not lumbering dreadnoughts, but nimble fighters, screaming into space on plumes of blue fire. The human pilots threw themselves into the melee with reckless abandon, dancing their ships through the maelstrom of fire to break up the Prylorian fighter formations. An urgent transmission cut through the chaos on the Retribution's bridge. "Admiral, Prylorian troops have made planetfall. They're targeting the major population centers. Russell clenched his fists. Dispatch the 19th Marine Expeditionary Unit. Get our forces dirt side now. He turned back to the tactical display, his mind racing. Hold the line in orbit. Protect Earth on the ground. A brilliant lance of energy erupted from the mothership's prow, stabbing down towards the blue marble of Earth. Russell felt his blood run cold. They were too late. The Prylorians would do it. Burn the planet to ash. But he had planned for this. Sentinel Wing, intercept! 5 dreadnoughts, the oldest and most heavily armored, threw themselves into the path of the oncoming beam. For a moment, they seemed to glow like newborn stars as their shields drank in the apocalyptic energies. And then, one by one, they shattered, hulls coming apart like petals stripped from a flower. The beam guttered out, leaving Earth untouched. The mothership's weapon began to cycle, building to fire again. They had bought time, nothing more. All ships, Russell roared. Every weapon, every launcher. Target the power core. The dreadnoughts burned with the fire of stars as they poured everything they had into the breach in the mothership's shields. Armor melted and ran like wax. Structural members snapped and fused. And then, with a soundless flash that seared the eyes, the core detonated. The mothership came apart, great flaming wounds ripping through its hull. Secondary explosions chained through its superstructure as it died its final death, torn to pieces by the forces it had sought to unleash. Kalar's howl of rage echoed across the comm channels as the Prylorian fleet fell back in disarray. Their ground forces, bereft of support, began to surrender en masse. You think this is over, human? Kalar spat. You've made an enemy today. And you've learned the depths of humanity's commitment, Russell replied coldly. Take your people and go. Earth is not yours to conquer. As the Prylorian ships limped away, Russell sagged back in his command chair, suddenly feeling every one of his years. They had won, but the cost. So many ships lost, so many brave souls sacrificed. And this was only the beginning, he knew. The galaxy would not forget what had transpired here. Earth had revealed its strength and the ancient dreadnoughts that were its sword and shield. There would be others who came to test that strength. Let them come. Russell Greene stood on the bridge of the Retribution, surveying the aftermath of the battle. Debris from destroyed ships drifted silently through space. The cost had been high, but Earth was safe. For now. Admiral, damage report coming in, his XO announced. Russell nodded, scanning the data on his tablet. Nearly a third of the dreadnoughts were out of commission, many others badly damaged. But they had held the line. Begin recovery operations, Russell ordered. I want every salvageable ship towed back to the dimensional hangars for repairs and upgrades. Over the following weeks, Earth's shipyards worked around the clock. The ancient dreadnoughts were stripped down, analyzed and rebuilt with the latest human tech. Fusion reactors replaced antimatter cores. Crystalline computer arrays were swapped for quantum processors. Russell watched from the observation deck as the first upgraded dreadnought, christened New Dawn, emerged from dry dock. Its hull gleamed with fresh armor plating, energy weapons pulsing with barely contained power. Impressive, a voice said behind him. Russell turned to see Ambassador Talara of the Eldurian Confederation. We've made some improvements, Russell replied with a smile. So I see, Talara nodded. My people are most impressed by your ingenuity. We believe an alliance would be mutually beneficial. Before Russell could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. He rushed to the command center, Talara close behind. Report, he barked. Sir, we've intercepted encrypted transmissions between the Prylorians and the Zarkon Empire, an intelligence officer explained. They're planning a joint attack on Earth. Russell's eyes narrowed. When? Based on the intel, within the next 72 hours. Russell's mind raced. They weren't ready for another full-scale invasion. Unless... I have a plan, he announced, but it's risky. Hours later, Russell stood on the bridge of a small task force, a dozen of Earth's most advanced ships. The rest of the fleet, including the newly upgraded Dreadnoughts, remained hidden in their dimensional hangars. "All ships maintain communication silence," Russell ordered. "We're the bait in this trap." They waited at the specified rendezvous point. Minutes stretched into hours. And then... "Multiple contacts," the sensor officer shouted. "Prilorian and Zarkon signatures. It's a massive fleet, sir." Russell nodded grimly. "Battle stations. Remember your training. We hold the line until I give the signal." The human ships were vastly outnumbered, but they fought with desperate courage. New weapons and tactics developed after the first Prilorian invasion proved devastatingly effective. A Zarkon cruiser exploded under sustained fire from Russell's flagship. 3 Prilorian destroyers fell to a spread of quantum torpedoes. But for every enemy ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. "Shields at 30%, an officer shouted. "We can't hold much longer." Russell allowed himself a small smile. "Now," he said simply. Space itself seemed to tear open as hundreds of dimensional rifts appeared behind the enemy fleet. The dreadnoughts of Earth's main fleet poured through, weapons blazing. Caught between hammer and anvil, the Prilorian and Zarkon ships found themselves in an impossible position. Russell opened a channel to the enemy flagships. "This is Admiral Russell Green of Earth," he said coldly. "Your fleets are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now, or be destroyed." For a long moment, there was silence. Then, one by one, the enemy ships began powering down their weapons. As the Prilorian and Zarkon leaders were brought aboard for negotiations, Russell allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Earth had proven itself a force to be reckoned with, but he knew the real challenges were just beginning. The stars beckoned, full of wonders and dangers alike. Humanity's journey into the wider galaxy had only just begun. Russell Green stood on the bridge of the Retribution, surveying the holographic display of Earth's newly fortified defenses. Massive orbital weapons platforms bristled with state-of-the-art energy cannons. Early warning satellites formed an intricate web around the solar system, their sensors primed to detect the slightest anomaly. "Status report," Russell ordered, his voice cutting through the low hum of bridge activity. His XO, Commander Chen, stepped forward. "Sir, the Sol System fortification project is 95% complete. The Dreadnought fleet upgrades are proceeding on schedule." Russell nodded, his eyes still fixed on the hologram. "And our covert operations?" Chen's expression darkened. "Intel is flooding in from our teams in Prilorian and Zarkon space. It's not good, sir." Russell turned, fixing Chen with a determined eyes. "Show me." The hologram shifted, displaying grainy footage of alien worlds. Vast labor camps stretched across barren landscapes, filled with emaciated figures from a dozen different species. Massive strip mines tore into planets' surfaces. Orbital shipyards churned out warships at a feverish pace. "They're preparing for war on a scale we've never seen," Chen said quietly. Russell's eyes sharp. He strode to the command table, calling up a secure channel to the Galactic Council. "This ends now," he growled. Hours later, Russell stood before the assembled council, laying out his plan for Operation Longshot. The chamber erupted into heated debate. "This is madness," the Eldurian representative shouted. "We cannot risk open war." "And what's your alternative?" Russell shot back. "Wait until they come for us?" The arguments raged on, but in the end, the council voted. Longshot was a go. Russell wasted no time. He divided his forces, assigning trusted commanders to each group. As the fleets assembled, he addressed the crews from the bridge of the Indomitable. "Today, we strike a blow for freedom," Russell's voice rang out across the comms. "Not just for humanity, but for all sentient beings in this galaxy. Stay focused, stay sharp, and may whatever gods you believe in watch over you." The assault began with eerie silence. Stealth dreadnoughts slipped through dimensional rifts, emerging deep in enemy territory. Precision strikes crippled communication arrays and defense grids before the Prilorians or Zarkon knew what hit them. Then all hell broke loose. Russell's voice cut through the chaos of battle. "All ships, punch through their lines. Push for the shipyards. The Indomitable plowed forward, shrugging off enemy fire like raindrops. Her weapons blazed, reducing Prilorian cruisers to twisted wreckage. A massive orbital battery turned its guns on the human flagship, pummeling her shields. Divert auxiliary power to forward shields, Russell barked. Helm, full speed ahead. The Indomitable surged forward, slamming through the debris field of destroyed ships. Her prow smashed into the orbital battery, tearing through armor and structural supports. As they pulled away, Russell watched with grim satisfaction as the massive gun platform began to break apart. Sir, a sensor tech called out, we've located the Central Command hub. Russell's eyes narrowed. All Marines to drop pods. We're going in. The bridge rocked as Prilorian ships made a desperate push to stop them. Russell gripped the command rail, watching the tactical display as his Marines streamed towards the command hub. This is Green, he growled into the comm. I want Kalar alive. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Admiral Kelman's voice crackled over the comms, reporting success on the Zarkan front. Admiral Nakamura's teams were freeing slaves by the millions. As the dust settled, Russell stood in the smoking ruins of the Prilorian Command Center. Kalar knelt before him, bound and seething with hatred. You've lost, Russell said coldly. Your empire ends today. He turned away, keying his comm. This is Green. Operation Longshot is a success. Commence Phase 2. Russell watched from the Indomitable's observation deck as pinpoint strikes reduced the opulent palaces of the Prilorian elite to rubble, a fitting end to their reign of tyranny. In the days that followed, newly liberated worlds flocked to join the Galactic Council. Russell found himself hailed as a hero, the architect of a new era of freedom and cooperation. But even as the celebrations raged across 1,000 worlds, Russell stood alone on the Indomitable's bridge. His eyes were fixed on the star-filled void beyond the view screen, his mind racing with possibilities and dangers yet to come. Russell Green stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, his face illuminated by the eerie glow of holographic displays. The years had etched deep lines into his weathered features, a testament to the burdens of leadership. Admiral, his XO spoke, voice tight with tension. Deep recon drones are transmitting new data. Green's eyes narrowed as he studied the incoming feed. Vast stretches of space, once teeming with life and civilization, now reduced to barren husks. Planets cracked open like eggs, their cores hollowed out by relentless strip mining. The Ankulon hive's destructive path stretched across light years. My God, Green whispered, his stomach churning. They're worse than we imagined. He keyed the comm, his voice carrying to every ship in the Allied Armada. This is Supreme Commander Green. You've all seen the reports. The Ankulon hive represents an existential threat to everything we've built. We will not allow them to devour our worlds. Green's fingers danced across the command console, bringing up schematics for an ancient weapon. The Infinity Sphere, he explained to his assembled officers, a doomsday device capable of unmaking reality itself. We pray we never have to use it. Hours later, Green stood before the Galactic Council, laying out his desperate plan. The chamber erupted into chaos. You can't be serious, the Eldurian representative shouted. The collateral damage will be far less than if we do nothing, Green cut him off. Every moment we delay, the hive grows stronger. After heated debate, the council reluctantly approved the offensive. Green wasted no time, marshaling the greatest fleet ever assembled. Over 500,000 ships converged on the Carduous choke point, a stellar bottleneck the hive would be forced to pass through. Green paced the Indomitable's bridge, watching as his forces laid intricate minefields. False subspace transmissions pulsed outward, promising rich pickings for the hive's endless hunger. Contact! A sensor officer shouted. Multiple signatures entering the system. The view screen lit up with a horrifying sight. Countless Ankulon ships, more like a plague of metal locusts than a proper fleet, poured through the choke point. All ships open fire, Green roared. The space between the fleets erupted in devastation. Dreadnought broadsides tore through swathes of Anculon vessels. Minefields detonated in blinding flashes, vaporizing thousands more. But for every hive ship destroyed, 10 more took its place. "Our lines are buckling, sir," an officer reported. "We can't hold them." Green's mind raced. "All ships prepare for emergency subspace jump. We're changing the battlefield." The Allied fleet vanished in a flash of displaced space-time, reappearing amidst the haunting ruins of an ancient galactic core. The pursuing hive forces followed, mindlessly chasing their prey. "Now!" Green ordered. "Detonate the depth charges!" Antimatter explosions rippled through the hive's ranks. The destruction stirred something far more terrifying, a dormant supermassive black hole at the galactic center. Alarms blared as the singularity's pull increased. "Tidal forces are tearing us apart," an engineer shouted. "Form the interdiction sphere," Green commanded. "Mass drivers, target these coordinates. We're going to tame that monster." The Allied dreadnoughts moved into position, their mass drivers firing with impossible precision. Slowly, agonizingly, they imparted spin to the black hole, shaping it into an infinitely dense quark ring. "Power levels critical," the chief engineer reported. "We can't maintain this." Green nodded grimly. "All hands, abandon ship. Emergency evac through subspace gates." As the last crew members fled, Green stood alone on the bridge. He watched the Anculon swarms mass for one final push. His finger hovered over the detonator. "For Earth," he whispered. "For all of us." The infinity sphere exploded in a soundless flash. An entropic wavefront swept outward, unmaking everything in its path. The Anculon vanguard simply ceased to exist, erased down to the last atom. Green sagged in his chair as the shockwave continued. Approached, its unstoppable power consuming everything in its path. Russell Green's eyes snapped open, his consciousness reasserting itself as the Indomitable phased back into normal space. The bridge hummed with activity as systems came online, status reports flooding in from every department. "Transition complete, Admiral," Jack Monroe reported, his voice steady despite the strain evident on his face. "All crew accounted for." Green nodded, his mind still reeling from the bizarre sensations of their subatomic journey. "Status of the warhead?" Dr. Talen's fingers danced across her console. "Detonation confirmed. The chain reaction is progressing exactly as predicted." Through the view screen, Green watched as reality itself seemed to unravel around the Anculon supreme nexus. The moon-sized polyhedron twisted and warped, its perfect geometry dissolving into a chaotic maelstrom of energy. "Incoming transmission," the comms officer called out. It's the hive." Green's eyes narrowed. "On screen." The view screen erupted into a cacophony of alien screams and disjointed images. Billions of Anculon drones thrashed in panic, their collective consciousness shattered. Vast armadas drifted aimlessly, weapons firing at random as they collided with celestial bodies. "My God," Major Bando breathed. "We did it. We actually did it." Green allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction before turning to his crew. "Set course for the Cardwas choke point. Let's go home." As the Indomitable slipped through subspace, Green retreated to his quarters. He stared at his reflection in the viewport, the weight of their actions settling heavily on his shoulders. They had saved billions of lives, but at what cost? The ethical implications of essentially lobotomizing an entire species, no matter how hostile, would haunt him for years to come. The Cardwas choke point materialized before them, a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen corpses. As they emerged from stealth, the comm system exploded with cheers and congratulations from the assembled Allied fleet. Green stood on the bridge, watching as Sarah Kelman's face appeared on the main view screen. Her eyes shone with a mix of relief and admiration. "Welcome back, sir," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "The Council is eager for your report." Green nodded, his expression grave. "Patch me through to all Allied ships." He took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "This is Admiral Russell Green. The Ankylon threat has been neutralized. Their supreme nexus is destroyed, and their forces are in disarray. But make no mistake, this victory has come at a terrible cost. We've glimpsed horrors beyond our comprehension, and I fear we've only scratched the surface of what's out there. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the bridge crew. To all those who fought and died to bring us to this moment, your sacrifices will never be forgotten. But our work is just getting started. Even now, I sense greater challenges on the horizon. We must remain vigilant, united, and prepared for whatever the universe throws at us next. As the transmission ended, Green turned to Jack Monroe. Set a course for Earth. It's time we face the music. The Indomitable glided gracefully through the debris field, its crew exhausted but triumphant. Yet, as they made their way home, Green couldn't shake the feeling that their greatest trials still lay ahead. In the vast, dark spaces between the stars, ancient forces stirred, awakened by the ripples of humanity's ascension. The war was over, but Green knew in his bones that the true battle for the fate of the galactic realm had only just begun. Years passed, and humanity basked in the golden age that followed the Ankylon crisis. Colonies flourished, trade routes bustled, and scientific breakthroughs pushed the boundaries of knowledge. Yet Admiral Russell Greene found no comfort in this prosperity. He paced the bridge of the Indomitable, his weathered face etched with worry lines. Sir, we've lost contact with Deep Space Probe Theta 9, Lieutenant Chen reported, her voice tight. Greene's eyes narrowed. Show me. The main view screen flickered to life, displaying the probe's last transmission. Greene watched as impossible gravitational distortions warped the very fabric of space. The probe's hull buckled under forces that defied comprehension before the feed cut to static. Get me the Council, Greene ordered. Now! Hours later, Greene stood before a panel of the galaxy's brightest minds. Dr. Alara Tisoni, a renowned Asari xenophysicist, manipulated a holographic display of the anomaly. The gravitational vectors are impossible, she said, azure skin pale with shock. It's as if space itself is being torn apart. Greene leaned forward. Your analysis? Dr. Xandar, a Volus astrocartographer, wheezed through his respirator. It matches no known phenomenon, but the similarity to theoretical transdimensional rifts is disturbing. Greene's eyes hardened. He tapped his comm unit. This is Admiral Greene. All ships of Carrier Group Omega, prepare for immediate deployment. We're going in. The Indomitable led the charge, her sleek hull filled with newly installed sensor arrays and experimental weaponry. Greene watched from the command deck as Sarah Kelman's Thunderchild and Katsuro Nakamura's Yamato took flanking positions. All ships maintain formation, Greene ordered. We don't know what we're dealing with. As they approached the anomaly, alarms blared across the bridge. The deck plates groaned as gravitational stresses threatened to tear the ship apart. Hull integrity at 82% and dropping, an engineer shouted. Greene gripped the command rail. Hold steady. Push through. The view screen erupted in a kaleidoscope of impossible colors. Reality itself seemed to fray at the edges, space-time twisting into nonsensical geometries. Suddenly, the anomaly tore open. Greene's blood ran cold as nightmarish shapes poured forth. Vast obsidian leviathans, their forms defying Euclidean geometry, emerged from the rift. Open fire, Greene roared. All ships engage. Reality incision munitions streaked across space, momentarily disrupting the alien monstrosities. But the invaders adapted with terrifying speed, their multi-dimensional defenses rendering conventional weapons useless. We can't hold them, Kelman's voice crackled over the comm. There's too many. Greene watched in horror as more rifts tore open, disgorging countless abominations. All ships, emergency retreat. Fall back to secondary defense line. The human fleet limped away, regrouping with Kelman and Nakamura's forces. Greene's mind raced as he assessed their dire situation. The invaders ignored the laws of physics, tearing holes in space-time at will. Sir, his tactical officer called out, we've gathered all available stellar drift injection ordnance as requested. Greene nodded grimly. Prepare for synchronized detonation. We're going to build a wall. The warheads fired in perfect sequence, their energies combining to form an ultra-dense barrier of compressed spacetime. For a moment, the invaders stalled against this impossible barricade. But Green knew it wouldn't last. All ships, prepare for emergency subspace transit. As the barrier began to crack, Green gave the order to evacuate. The battered human fleet engaged their drives, vanishing into subspace. But not before Green witnessed a massive obsidian tendril impale the Yamato, ripping Nakamura's ship apart. From the relative safety of subspace, Green watched as the Indomitable's final act unfolded. The containment shell collapsed into a ravenous singularity, swallowing invaders by the score. Yet even as the anomaly imploded, more transdimensional rifts tore open across the sector. Green slumped in his chair, the weight of their defeat crushing down upon him. This was no mere battle, but the opening salvo of a war beyond human comprehension, and the enemy could strike anywhere, at any time, without warning. He keyed the fleet-wide comm. "This is Admiral Green. All ships, set course for Earth. We need to prepare. The real war has only just begun." The Indomitable's engines sputtered and died as the transdimensional shockwave swept across the galaxy. Admiral Russell Green gripped his command chair, his squeezing hard as reality itself seemed to unravel around him. The bridge crew stared in stunned silence as the starfield outside warped and twisted, space-time itself bending to incomprehensible forces. "Status report," Green barked, his voice cutting through the eerie silence. Lieutenant Chen's fingers danced across her console, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Sir, I can't make sense of these readings. It's as if our entire history has been rewritten." Green's mind raced as he processed the implications. The gamble had worked, but at what cost? He keyed the ship-wide comm. "All hands, brace for impact. We're about to experience a total reality reset." The words had barely left his mouth when a blinding flash engulfed the ship. For a moment that stretched into eternity, Green felt his consciousness fragment, experiencing countless possible futures simultaneously. He saw humanity ascendant, humanity extinct, and every permutation in between. Then as suddenly as it began, it was over. Green blinked, his surroundings slowly coming into focus. He found himself standing in a field of tall grass, the scent of fresh earth filling his nostrils. In the distance, he could make out the silhouette of a primitive settlement. "Admiral!" a familiar voice called out. Green turned to see Jack Monroe stumbling towards him, looking just as disoriented. "Jack," Green acknowledged, relief evident in his voice. "What's the last thing you remember?" Monroe shook his head, struggling to piece together fragmented memories. "The warhead, we activated it, didn't we? But everything after that is a blur." Green nodded grimly. "It worked, but it seems we've paid a heavy price. Look around you, Jack. We've been thrown back to the Stone Age." As if to underscore his point, a flock of birds took flight from a nearby copse of trees, their calls jarringly familiar yet alien in this new context. "Sir!" Chen's voice rang out as she jogged up to them, clutching a cobbled-together communicator. "I've managed to establish contact with some of the other crew. They're scattered across this continent, all reporting similar conditions." Green's tactical mind kicked into gear. "Gather everyone you can find. We need to pool our resources and knowledge before it's lost." As Chen hurried off, Green surveyed the pristine landscape. In the distance, a plume of smoke rose ominously against the setting sun. Even here, in this new reality, the fight wasn't over. "Jack," Green said, his voice low and urgent, "those transdimensional bastards are still out there. Weakened, yes, but not defeated. We need to prepare." Monroe nodded, a spark of the old fire returning to his eyes. "Where do we start, sir?" Green's gaze hardened as he stared at the horizon. "We rebuild, we adapt, and we remind ourselves of who we are and what we're capable of. The technology may be gone, but the spirit that drove us to the stars still burns within us." As night fell, Green and his ragtag band of survivors huddled around a makeshift campfire. The Admiral's mind raced with plans and strategies, knowing that somewhere out in the vast darkness, fragments of an incomprehensible enemy still lurked. The battle for their very existence had only just begun, but as Green looked at the determined faces of his crew, he felt a flicker of hope. They had faced impossible odds before and emerged victorious. This time would be no different. The lush jungles of Ixar Prime writhed with unnatural energy as Russell Green crouched behind a fallen tree, his weathered face streaked with sweat and alien ichor. The air crackled with ozone as another volley of plasma fire screamed overhead, incinerating the dense foliage. "Hold the line!" Russell bellowed, his voice hoarse from hours of combat. He hefted a cobbled-together pulse rifle, its power core humming with scavenged alien tech. To his left, Private Jenna Chen ducked as a shape-shifting horror lunged at her, its form twisting into impossible angles. She fired her makeshift railgun, the hypervelocity round tearing through the creature's ever-shifting mass. "Sir, we can't keep this up," Chen shouted, her eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. "They just keep coming." Russell gritted his teeth, watching as more of the trans-dimensional monstrosities poured through the reality-warping rift. The Dreadnought loomed above, its obsidian hull defying Euclidean geometry as it gouged deep furrows in the planet's surface. "Fall back to checkpoint Delta," Russell ordered, tapping his wrist-mounted comm unit. "Tactical withdrawal now." As his battered troops retreated into the dense alien jungle, Russell reached into a hidden compartment in his armor. He pulled out a device that pulsed with an otherworldly glow, the alien artificer interface he'd recovered from Prometheus 9. "This better work," he muttered, activating his neural implants. The moment the artificer connected with his cybernetics, Russell's world exploded into incomprehensible sensory overload. Streams of impossible data flooded his consciousness, burning through his neural pathways like liquid fire. Russell staggered, nearly falling as his body began to phase in and out of reality. He pushed through the agony, forcing his fractured mind to focus on destabilizing the Dreadnought's dimensional anchors. The air around him warped and twisted as Russell's quantum waveform fluctuated wildly. He could feel pieces of himself being torn away, scattered across countless realities. Yet he persisted, his iron will wrestling with the Leviathan's alien algorithms. With a sound that defied description, the rift powering the Dreadnought ruptured. The massive ship began to twist in on itself, reality rejecting its presence like an infection. As the Dreadnought was expelled from this plane of existence, Russell felt an irresistible pull. His mangled psyche, still linked to the artificer, was dragged into the collapsing dimensional vortex. Russell tumbled through realms beyond human comprehension, his very essence scattered across the multiverse. Flashes of alternate timelines bombarded his fractured consciousness, countless versions of humanity's struggles against cosmic horrors. When the maelstrom finally subsided, Russell found himself standing on a familiar deck. He blinked, disoriented, as he realized he was aboard the research vessel that had first discovered the buried Dreadnought fleet in the Kuiper Belt. But this wasn't just a memory. Somehow, impossibly, he had been thrown back to that pivotal moment, reborn as his younger self, but with the hard-won knowledge of countless future conflicts seared into his mind. As alarms blared and confused crew members rushed about, Russell's eyes narrowed with cold drive. He strode purposefully towards the quantum gate linking the ship to Earth, his mind already formulating plans to rewrite history. This time, humanity would be ready for the coming storm, and Russell Green would ensure that the cosmic horrors that had haunted his nightmares would never again threaten his people or his allies. With a few deft keystrokes, Russell bypassed the gate's safety protocols. As he stepped into the swirling vortex of quantum energy, he allowed himself a grim smile. The real work was just beginning. Russell Green blinked, his consciousness snapping back into focus as he materialized on the bridge of the Indomitable. The familiar hum of the ship's systems surrounded him, but everything felt different. He glanced down at his hands, noting the web of scars etched across his skin, a testament to countless battles fought across time and space. The bridge crew turned to face him, their eyes widening in surprise. Lieutenant Chen's jaw dropped as she took in the sight of her commander, a hardened warrior who bore little resemblance to the man who had stepped through the quantum gate mere moments ago. "Admiral Green?" Chen stammered. "Is that you?" Russell nodded, his voice gravel rough as he spoke. "It's me, Lieutenant. We have work to do." He strode to the command console, fingers flying across the interface as he inputted a series of complex coordinates. The view screen flickered to life, displaying a real-time tactical overlay of the galaxy. "Sir," Commander Monroe interjected, confusion evident in his voice, "what are we looking at?" Russell's eyes narrowed as he focused on a cluster of red dots near the outer rim. The Prilorian staging grounds. In another timeline, they would have launched their first invasion from there. Not this time. He keyed in a series of commands, and the Indomitable's engines thrummed to life. "All hands, prepare for transdimensional jump. We're taking the fight to them before they even know we exist." The ship lurched forward, reality warping around them as they tore through the fabric of space-time. When they emerged, the Prilorian shipyards loomed before them, a sprawling network of orbital platforms and half-constructed warships. "Open fire," Russell ordered, his voice devoid of emotion. "Wipe them off the map." The Indomitable's weapons blazed to life, joined by a fleet of rift-borne dreadnoughts that materialized alongside them. Space itself seemed to buckle under the onslaught as the Prilorian defenses crumbled. As the last of the enemy shipyards disintegrated into cosmic dust, Russell felt a twinge of something. Not quite regret, but a hollowness that echoed through his being. He turned away from the view screen, already plotting their next target. "Set course for the Zarkon home system. We need to neutralize their leadership before they can consolidate power." And so it went, jump after jump, battle after battle. Russell's metatemporal armada carved a swath through history, rewriting the fate of entire civilizations. The Ankulon hive fell to microscopic sabotage, their endless swarms turning inward in a frenzy of self-destruction. Transdimensional invaders found their incursion points sealed before they could manifest. With each victory, Russell felt himself becoming more detached, his consciousness stretching across an ever-expanding web of alternate realities. He stood at the center of it all, a nexus point of infinite possibilities converging into a single, unbreakable spirit. But as he gazed out at the galaxy he had reshaped, a bastion of peace forged through eons of calculated violence, a creeping dread began to take hold. Russell realized that he could no longer feel the passage of time in any meaningful way. His existence had become a closed loop, eternally vigilant against threats that now existed only in potentia. He tried to take solace in the thriving worlds he had saved, the civilizations allowed to flourish free from cosmic horror. But as he reached out to touch the view screen, his hand passed through it like smoke. Russell Green, the man who had rewritten history, found himself forever separate from the reality he had created. The weight of eternity pressed down upon him, and for the first time in countless lifetimes, Russell felt truly alone. He was the warden of time itself, forever bound to his self-imposed duty. As the Indomitable drifted through the vast emptiness of space, Russell Green stood motionless at its helm, a silent guardian against horrors yet unimagined, trapped in an endless cycle of his own making.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.